Hi, I'm Stanley, and I have a big treat for you, and I know it's going to be a big treat for me. I'm here with one of the top talents in the comic book business, Jim Lee. Jim, it's great to see you.
How you do, Sam?
Listen, you know, the old gag about our parents are the only ones who can tell us apart, right? My namesake over here,
right.
And I'm proud of it. Jim, before we get into the artwork and the things that everybody wants to see, I just want to know a little more about you. Don't ask me why, but where are you originally from? How did you get here? How were we lucky enough to have you?
Oh, boy. Well, basically, I was born in Seoul, South Korea. We moved here when I was 5, and I remember drawing from the moment I can remember anything. I just remember I was 4 or 5, and I had a woman as a tutor, and she would teach me how to draw. And
you had a tutor who taught you to draw?
Yeah,
4 or 5?
I remember working oil pastels, and she said, start with a light yellow crayon, and work on with darker values and things like that.
Wow.
I still feel I use that knowledge today. And then I took a lot of high school classes and things like that. I've always drawn and been pretty good at that. And then, but as I got older and I had to be more serious about my life, I never really intended to become a comic book artist. I went to college and got a degree in psychology, and I was actually a pre-med when I was there, and something just didn't gel right. And
I'm sorry you said you had a degree in psychology. I was feeling so nice and relaxed talking to you. Now I'm going to be all nervous and watching everything I do.
That was biopsychology, experiments of rats and stuff.
Is that what it is? Biopsychology?
Well, there's I don't want to get too much into it, but there's cognitive and all these different fields within psychology.
That's great. But you finally went legitimate and got into comics, right?
Yeah, exactly. What happened was my senior year, you have to write a thesis to graduate, and to ease up on my workload, I took some drawing classes. I figured I can draw, and there's no homework or anything like that. It'll be a breeze. Yeah. And I found that those are probably the best classes I took at college. And my teacher was very encouraging and said, "Have you ever thought about an art career?" And that kind of got the idea in my head. And so after I graduated, I told my parents I was going to take a year off before I applied to medical school. The idea of 4 more years of school and all this training did not really appeal to me. And so I put together some artwork, and I went to a convention. I showed it to some editors at Marvel, and I got work. It took about 4 months. I was pretty fortunate.
Pretty lucky for us that you went to a Marvel editor. I mean, you might have gone to just an ordinary person.
The funny thing is that they were the only ones that gave me work. I showed it to a lot of smaller companies in D.C.
That's why they're smaller companies.
That's right. There you go, Stan.
Well, that's really great. Yeah.
So ever since then, it's just been a roller coaster ride. And like this year has probably been the biggest year yet.
And now, do you mind if I tell the people why this is one of the biggest years yet? This is really such an incredible fact. It's hard to believe. Years ago, and over the years in the comic book business, if a book sold 500,000 copies, or 750,000, or 1,000,000 copies for a comic book, I mean, that was phenomenal. Well, this man, Jim Lee, did the highest-selling, illustrated the highest-selling comic book of all time last year. He did X-Men #1, and Jim, I can't even tell him how many copies that book sold.
I think we sold about 8.2 million copies. So that was the latest count.
8.2 million copies of one comic book, and Jim, you've got to show the book.
Well, we're still counting the results from Idaho and stuff. We got a lot of late straggler buyers. This is 3 of the 5 covers. I guess the other 2 are sold out. But they're all X-Men #1. They're all released in August of 1991.
Even Jim can't get them all. Now, I think you better explain what you mean by 3. Usually you do a comic book and it has 1 cover.
Right.
What happened over here?
Well, basically, recent history has shown that when they produce a #1 comic, especially of a popular title like Spider-Man or X-Men, there's a very strong response from the audience, the collectors and the readers. They'll buy multiple copies because they like it so much and they see it as an investment. So there was a feeling that they knew they were going to sell millions of copies going into it. And the feeling on everyone's part was, why not give them something extra? Instead of getting the same comic, we can give them different covers. And each issue actually has a different middle section, a different poster.
I'll be done.
So there's like different things in each one.
Let's see that poster, and we'll see this poster.
Check out all the
posters. And hold it up long enough and give the camera time to get on it, because this is really interesting. These are 2 separate posters, the same book, but different editions of the same book, wherever the camera is. I hope I'm holding these the right way. And here's a 3rd poster here, right?
Right.
And there were actually a couple more that you don't have with you.
Right, the special edition had an inside poster and a little sketchbook in the back and everything.
And they're all different. Wait a minute, isn't this the same as
that? No, the poster is.
Am I showing the wrong one?
Yeah, there's like a middle ad here. So anyway, this is the poster here.
This is why they moved me out to the coast. I do things wrong occasionally. That's the poster. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, and also the covers line up to make one larger image. This is getting a little tricky.
Oh, that's great.
It's one of these.
You want me to help you?
Yeah. It's one
Where
of these,
does this one go?
I
you mean this would be one picture?
Right, right. And there's one more cover, and
there's probably something in between these two.
No, it's supposed to line up, I think.
It does, because there's the horizon line of the rocks, and it comes together. You're absolutely right. These line up.
Right.
That's great.
Multifunction comics.
Yeah. That's great, he says modestly, of our books. Anyway, as I say, it's a staggering feat to sell over 8 million copies of one thing. And the multiple covers, of course. Now, what are you doing currently, Jim?
Well, I'm still working on the X-Men. I think I'm on issue 8 or 9, something like that.
You mean after selling 8 million copies, we haven't fired you? We're still
letting you no. Yeah, I don't know. You know,
aren't we nice to you? Yeah.
They got a cutback. Basically, a kickback. What am I saying? Cutback. Basically, I'm plotting and drawing the book. A plotter is sort of a guy that comes up with a story but doesn't supply the dialogue. So the concepts and the new characters and the new villains are created by me. And then
you've gotten so much into the series with the illustrating it that now you want to contribute the story also. Right. So do you work with the writer and the editor and you say, this is the story I would like? I want you to notice, I ask you these things as if I don't know, but I don't want people to think I'm really this ignorant, but I feel it's the way to do it, you know?
No, I usually will talk with the editor, Bob Harris, first, and we talk about possible story ideas. He goes, no, yes. And I go, okay, we'll go with that, and I'll flesh it out some more, and then I'll oftentimes talk to the scripter, the writer who's going to supply the dialogue and tell them what's going to happen and get their input. And you know, there are people in the studio I work with that I ask them for input. Pretty much anybody and everywhere. You know, the fan mail that comes in, I read it and